I want to see an America
Right.
that wants background checks on every gun.
So that's just to show, really, somebody trying to make it real. Now I know that, not every gun used in a crime, not every violent act with a gun is, from a gun that's bought without a background check. What happened in Columbia, Maryland this weekend was somebody who bought a gun legally in a gun store, passed a background check. But we have to make sure that this is something we do across the board. We can't just not let people go checked at all. I mean, there have been several high-profile shootings that have resulted from sales just like this. The fact is, we don't really know how many sales at a percentage of all guns sold in a given year this is. Law enforcement says somewhere between 5 and 40%. I think like 6.6. There's like something like 25 million guns sold in a given year. So that's roughly like 5 or 6 million guns that go totally unchecked. People say, okay, well, this gun show thing, background checks, well, how does that stop the dude selling the guns out of the trunk of my neighborhood? It's like, well, where did that guy get his guns from? There's no like illegal gun manufacturing plant somewhere here in Baltimore or in DC, yet there are guns here. All guns that are used in crime began their life as legal guns, and through one way or another, unchecked gun sales is a big one. Theft, things like that, they follow into the illegal market. So background checks on all gun sales stops the supply of that guy's guns in his trunk. He said there's no one thing that stops all guns crimes, but we have to make sure background checks are done across the board. This is the one thing I thought was just so common sense that I wanted to get involved and advocate for. Earlier this year, we had a vote in the United States Senate around this very issue, requiring a background check on every gun sale, with the exception of a transfer to an immediate family member or a temporary transfer to your friend hunting. I think there should be legitimate exceptions. You don't have to background check your son or your grandkid. I get that. Legitimate exceptions. And this came for a vote in the United States Senate. I'm sure you guys heard the news. The vote failed. The media loves this issue, the fatalism of this issue, how you can't do anything about it. And as much as the media said this was a loss, I look at what happened earlier this year as a victory. We had a majority of U.S. senators. We had 55 members vote for it. Usually, 55 does the job. However, for some reason, we need 60 for everything nowadays. Anyway, 55 members, a majority voted for this. 45 members blocked it. That's huge. Before this vote, this past year that I'm talking about, we hadn't had a vote in the United States Senate on any piece of good gun policy in like 2 decades. So we get our first vote and we get a majority. We didn't hit the numeric majority. That's huge. And that happens because people stood up and got involved. People actually said, I care about this and I want to let my elected official know that I care about this. For so long, I think elected officials didn't think we really gave a damn. And they didn't think that when they were making that decision of which way should I vote on this, am I going to get hell from one side of the gun industry and people who own guns and think that I'm trying to take away their guns? Or may get a couple calls from a couple of grandmas, and that's it. And usually that was kind of the equation for that. And we've had to balance that equation. We've been balancing a lot better now because young people, mothers of young children, lawyers, cops, victims of gun violence have started to speak up and say enough is enough. I think most people too, I think we have to deal with this issue that they don't think this could happen to them. I certainly thought I would not be doing this when I was getting old. I did not think gun violence was going to happen. I grew up overseas, like I said. I grew up in Somalia, in Indonesia, in Bangladesh. I lived in Egypt when 9/11 happened. My whole life overseas, my parents, my family, friends, and my aunts and uncles were terrified for my safety. Wanted me to come back to America where it was safe. And the irony of going back to a school enrolling in small Southwest Virginia and nearly getting killed. I acknowledge that irony. I'm trying to do something about it. So, I know it's probably getting close. I really want to have some questions and kind of go back and forth. And background checks is the gun policy issue of our time. There are many other issues, assault weapons, things like that. I get that, but I don't think anything will have as big an impact as requiring a background check across the board, making sure the system of gun sales is legit. This is dealing with the problem of people getting killed in this country from the supply side. I get that. I look at how do we reduce the number of people shot and killed in this country every year. We have to deal with both the supply of these guns and the demand for them. The demand to use them violently I'm talking about, what this conversation is, what this video is about, what I try to do every day, is dealing with the supply side. Practically, this should be the easier part, right? All we have to do is get 60 people in one room, and 218 people in the other room in DC, and everyone say aye. Like, practically, that's simple. Politically, another story. But the demand side, that is what I want to spend my longer career doing. Why is it that people pick up a gun and use it to solve their problems, or resolve their conflicts, or earn money or earn respect? I mean, those are the longer, bigger systemic issues that we have to address in our society. And that doesn't come with changing laws as much as it does changing cultures, changing opportunities. You can't just tell people, stop shooting people without giving them something else to do in some cases. There are some wonderful programs that do this. Here in here in Baltimore is a program that was started in Chicago. In Chicago it's called Ceasefire Chicago. Baltimore here is called Safe Streets. And they take former gang members, people who have been shot other people, and realize one day, if I keep doing this, I'm going to end up either dead or in jail, or have credibility in the neighborhoods where they're from. And they literally go and resolve conflicts. They stand between two people who are fighting. They visit people who are recovering from gunshot wounds in the hospital and say, I was in your shoes. I plotted my revenge in the hospital, and it brought me right back here. And I got my friend killed. Like, there's another way to deal with this. They visit people who just lost someone in those tense moments of a retaliation, and try to mediate and say, there's another way to deal with this. Just ease the tension. Because people we need to, the conflict resolution is something, and why you guys do it in peace studies here is so important. People just don't see that there's another option resorting to using a gun. So we have to come at both the supply and the demand. And I'm sorry, I know I'm trying to get a lot in a short period of time. And I think when we get those supply issues and some of these demand issues resolved or improved in some way, we will go from 100,000 Americans shot every year, 30,000 Americans killed every year, 32 Americans killed every single day. That's a Virginia Tech every single day in this country. We're never going to get to zero, I get that. If we can go from 32 to 25, not only is that 7 family members still here, families still intact, it's millions of dollars that you save in advance, that you don't spend on legal fees, on court fees, on the billions of dollars of medical fees, lost revenue. The phrase an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure absolutely applies to something like this. It makes what happens in Blacksburg, what happened in Newtown, what happened in Columbia, Maryland, what happens to 32 of us on a daily basis in this country, a little less likely to happen to somebody else, and I think it's worth it. So thank you guys very much for your time.